All right, so this is a presentation about configuration management, and you're probably in the, if you're remotely technical, maybe you do development or ops, or you're a DevOps, manage a project, and one, like the rest of us. So thanks for coming. I'm Dan Gurin. I'm with, since I'm an engineer there, we do open and agile businesses. And you're who develop directly on production. Okay, that's good. Well, maybe back in the 90s we did, but yeah, we don't really do that anymore. And a big part of configuration management in is to recognize that we do have these workflows that go from dev to test, production, and even have things going on boxes. So in the bad old days, we didn't really have configuration management built within Drupal proper, and so we'll look at a little bit of history on that. As you probably know, we use features configuration management, but it wasn't really supposed to be that way. So features was built to features, and the example that's frequently given is for a photo gallery. So you might have types, some taxonomy, and display configuration that's all together in that gallery feature. But to get to those different environments, you can use features, but it's not quite as slick as it could be. So you have revert and some overrides maybe, and cache maybe, and some might still be overridden. You might have some conflicts between two features where you're trying to define the same parameter in two different places. So there can be all kinds of problems with using features, as I'm sure must have experienced. But it did become the de facto because there wasn't really true configuration. And like I said, it kind of works, but sometimes it doesn't. And I know I've spent a lot of time just trying to untangle features, particularly with like the field base. Sometimes you'd have to make a separate feature just for field bases, because if you have that, what I like to do is, some people say keep it simple, stupid, but I say keep it simple, smart. And so with the configuration management in Drupal 8, really the key, I think, is just using the full. You can do with single components. There is an option for this configuration manager. It's a core module. So if you have Drupal 8, you have this module. You can just enable it, and you're pretty much golden. So here's a little display, what it would look like if you were. You probably want to export, because then you wouldn't have anything to import. But yeah, if you take this full archive, and it just all of the configuration for the full site. So you can do whatever workflow you want. You could do this. You could take whichever environment you've been building on, exportation. Click over to the import tab, import that file in another environment, and you're pretty much good to go. if you can use the single items, if you know what you're doing, or if there's some configuration that you have on the site that you're using that don't want to carry over into other environments. But for the most part, I would say, just stick with the full archive. You can also do drush. I don't know if you can read this. The help for the import and the export of the configuration manager in drush. So a couple options and arguments there. And it's possible to set multiple imports and exports. Not exactly sure why you might do that for the same, but it's possible. So you can define, which one you're using here. It's also available in Drupal console, but I have to confess I haven't actually used it. So, but I know it is available. So people have info on that, welcome to share it. And so feature still exists in Drupal 8. It's something that you might want to use if you are doing a profile. So you have ever done work with a profile before, that you can put features in there, and it's a way to distinguish between sites. This might be in the context of a multi-site installation where you want to turn on and off searchers for different sites. I've even seen that approached where you could have a separate feature for each site, but I think that might be a bastardization of features also. For a distribution, if you have a profile that you're going to be sending out to our Drupal community here and use features there, it wouldn't really bundle that configuration up in configuration management if you were using a distribution. So we also have overrides. So it's nice to be able to override configuration sometimes, and these will take precedence if you do that. So it would generally be in like a settings.php file, or something that is in that file. So acting like a settings.php, maybe it's a .local or a .environment if you're getting tricky with your deployment. But there are two kinds of configuration. The configuration are the ones that you're going to want to override, which is where it's just a value for a particular item. Similar in to the variable get and set in Drupal 7. Now the variable is called config instead of var. Var, is it var? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, but it pretty similar and behaves pretty similarly to that in the settings.php file. One do with that is that if you have overrides, they do not show up in the admin UI for the configuration manager. So just something to be generally aware of. And it appears spoken about half as slow here, because that's the end of my slides, but we can have a free and open discussion since we do free and open software. If anyone has any questions or answers. That's a fantastic question. I'm going to repeat questions for our viewing audience at home. The question is, there's a directory where you can define where to house the configuration management info. And I think by default, that is in, well, it's in Site's default, right? By default, that's a good default place. Oh, see, right, okay, one more. I didn't go far enough, okay. It's probably not the best place for it to go. We like to take it outside of the web root, so that it's not accessible over the web. So generally, how we and probably millions of other people like to set up our sites is that we have like a repository root at the top, and then you have your web root underneath. So there's a and you can put your management just inside your repository, but not inside the web root. So it's a sibling of the web root in the repository. Trying to make the tree here. Maybe. You might have an AD or something. Right. I'm not exactly sure if there are sensitive things in there, but you certainly wouldn't want that stuff changed without, having it changed. So, keeping that out of web root is just something that we like to do. And then you can define that path in the settings.php. So you can basically say, and you can name it, you could name it super secret and then put that outside of web root. The current convention, I think, is to put it in that site's default files, and then give the like some crazy hash, which is, I suppose that is a security thing, but it's not as good as taking it out of the web root. So yeah, I think that since the Drupal project, it is a repository, and it doesn't come as a child. The web root and the repository root are the same thing in the Drupal project. There would be no way for them to say, put this thing outside of the web root. So, something we can do in Drupal 10. I don't know. Yep. Yeah, so the question is about when you have multiple developers working on the same thing, and we do this too. So you want to look out for conflicts. A really nice thing to do also with this configuration manager is put your production site into read-only. So there's a module called configuration read-only or something like that, and you just enable it on production, and that way nobody can change the configuration on production. So that's a good first start when you're working with a team or really anyone, right? The configuration management is put out into YAMLs, and they are, so if you have developers working in areas, basically, it's a similar kind of situation to features before where you want to be sure you don't step on toes, but, if you see a YAML file changed on something that you're not even working on as a developer, maybe don't commit that change. Yeah, I mean, we would generally the practice would be to do the full export, and then, if you see that something changed that you didn't intend to change, it would be worth investigating that, so that you don't accidentally override someone else's work. I think, I don't know if anyone else has, thoughts about that, but I guess there's no way to necessarily get fully away from that kind of thing that we had with features, where you can override the other guy's stuff. or girl stuff, yeah. All right, any other questions? I know it's just about lunchtime, so. All right, well, thanks for coming. And there's also a Getting Back to Basic Drupal deployment by Matthew Connerton at 3:40 in the Ursa Minor room. That'll probably touch on some of this. And enjoy using the configuration manager.